Hello, fellow griever. You have found the Leftover Pieces Suicide Loss Conversations podcast, and I am Melissa, your host. I am with you on this journey because my 21-year-old son, Alex, died by suicide on August 7th of 2016. Since launching this podcast in late 2020, I have followed my heart and expanded the leftover pieces to include books and an online community where I host Zoom support groups every week. It is there, in this community, that I lead other parents who have lost a child by suicide from survival toward hope and into healing. The website is also a resource hub, a connecting point for all survivors of suicide loss. You can find me, ways to connect with me, and links to everything that I'm doing in the community on my website, theleftoverpieces.com. Know that I'm always open to suggestions and feedback. And if you know someone that I should connect with to be on the podcast, please let me know that as well. So now, I invite you to join me for real conversations, candid talk on hard topics surrounding the loss of our loved ones by suicide. I talk to other loss survivors, mental health experts, advocates, and on alternate weeks, I offer shorter solo episodes where I go down the rabbit hole to discuss things that have been on my mind or possibly parts of my journey that I feel would be beneficial to share. Every week, we explore the questions that haunt us, seek the courage to uncover the healing tools within us, and offer the comfort of a community that we all need so very much. It's true that our hearts and lives have been shattered, but come along with me, and together, let's choose to find meaning and even happiness amid the leftover pieces before us. Welcome. Hello, fellow griever, and welcome. It is February. If you're listening to this, we just started back with conversation episodes, and today it is my honor to launch the first conversation of 2025. If you didn't listen in January, there was a daily nugget every day of the month that's there to listen to. There was also, I believe, 3 rabbit hole episodes that you could listen to. And now we are back to our quote unquote regular programming. So it's me. I will be releasing episodes the way I did before, conversations mixed in with rabbit holes. Ideally, every other week. There could be deviations from that due to different scheduling things that I need to do. So once in a while, you could get 2 rabbit holes in a row. You could also get 2 conversations in a row. But the rough idea is to give you several styles of podcasts to listen to. If you're new to me, that's the way I do things, because we don't always have a full hour to hour and a half to listen, but usually we have 10 to 20 minutes. And so I try to get the rabbit holes in the shorter amount of time. I'm also going to start doing more like I did in January. I may not do full months, but maybe a couple of weeks at a time or something where I do these daily podcasts. I enjoy doing it, and I got a lot of good feedback from you all that you were enjoying the little daily nuggets. So I'm sitting with it for this first part of February, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to come back in some form. It won't be the Daily Stoic again like that. I hope that if you were inspired to do the Daily Stoic yearly meditations, that is as useful to you as it has been to me. I hope you will continue to journal around that. If you were journaling around it, I am doing that all year long, as well as other journals that I write in as well. But for today, without further ado, I want to get into introducing our guest. And today is season 6, episode 36 of The Leftover Pieces, Suicide Loss Conversations. And if I did not say so, I am Melissa, your host, and it is my honor to be here and to be back in the full swing of talking to people and having these conversations. Feels like the right place to be at this point in the year. Today, I welcome back a guest that I had in season 3. She was actually season 3, episode 16. You'll hear the magic of that, which I did not know at the time, but you'll hear her talk about that in this episode. I did put a link in the show notes. You guys probably know, if you've listened a while, I have very extensive show notes, so any links that you're looking for should be there. And let me introduce today's guest. Her name is Lynn Brooks. More specifically, she goes by Grief Coach Lynn. And Lynn, like me, is a fellow survivor mom. I first spoke to her, like I said, in April of 2022. And at that time, Lynn was 3 years in. So 3 years have passed. And so Lynn is almost 6 years in. We talked almost 3 years to the date, with just a few months shy of when we talked last time. And a lot had changed for Lynn. And I was so honored for her to reach back out and ask if we could catch up on what's been happening in her life over the last 3 years. And I do these type of episodes because I think this is relevant. It's relevant to see how another griever's journey changes in the course of a few years. It can bring enlightenment and it can bring hope. And boy, Lynn shows up with the hope today in this episode, because she's been up to a lot. And I feel like there's a lot that we can celebrate with her, that we can take from the things that she has to say. And I'm going to read just a little bit about Lynn in her words. She is a certified grief educator. She calls herself the visionary and chief empathy officer for Destined to Thrive Grief Coaching. She's also a speaker and an author. And after her son's death on August 4th of 2019, Lynn says she made the choice not to be consumed by grief and her tragic loss. She readily shares her grief story. As she says, she chose to live in the aftermath versus letting it suck her down and get lost. She talks about how she strives daily to keep moving forward, why she does it, and the positive impact self-love has on how she manages her grief. She supports adults who are ready to move forward with living meaningful, impactful lives despite having experienced the loss of a loved one. She is also the co-author of a compilation book. She has a story in a book called Prepare for Purpose, and she talks about her suicide grief journey journal memory book that she has authored herself, and rightfully so is very proud of. And I have links to all these things. And without further ado, let's welcome Lynn. Hi, Lynn, and welcome back to the podcast. Even though it's been almost 3 years, it doesn't feel that way. We've been chatting behind the scenes, and welcome back.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me back. And yes, I didn't realize it had been 3 years either, but it has been almost 3 years. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's my honor. And even though I will link in the show notes, and we will probably reference that other podcast episode at some point that was season 3, episode 16, that people should absolutely listen to, I do want to talk about your journey a little bit, which means I would like you to start where all of my guests do and share with us your lost story as you like to tell it or explain it.
Okay. One thing I did not remember or recall from almost 3 years ago, that it was season 3, episode 16. And my son's birthday is 3/16. And I just saw that when I reviewed the episode. But anyway,
that is not accidental, ma'am. It was on my part, but it was divinely not accidental.
Wait a minute, 3/16. Okay, Daniel. But anyway, to respond to your request, Of course, my name is Lynn Lewis, and I am Daniel Brooks Lewis' mom, who is was a professional firefighter. He was 30 years old. He passed away on August 4th, 2019 by suicide. And thus, I'm in this conversation with Melissa and your audience today, Melissa. So thanks again for having me back. But just a little bit about what happened is, as I said, Daniel was a professional firefighter. He did not show up for his shift on July 29th of 2019. And his crew leader called my husband to say they had not heard from him. He was not responding to their call and wanted to know if we had heard from him. And we had not. I happened to have been in the city where he was living at the time on that day. So I went by his house. His car was in its parking space right in front of his apartment door, but no Daniel. And so that really was I call it the prelude to my grief journey that I'm on. And now it's been over 5 years ago. The thing about my journey is I feel like it has layer upon layer because him being missing for those 6 days, that was, I call it the longest 6 days of my life because we had no idea where he was and we did not hear from him. Nobody that know us or knew him saw or heard from him from that day on. And then on August 4th, the authorities from the Richmond City Fire Department and the police department showed up at our home at around 10 o'clock on that Sunday night to tell us that he had been found deceased in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was about 5 hours from where we live. And so that was what started the journey. And then about 7 months in, which was around what would have been his 31st birthday, I made a declaration to myself that though this burden of his death would be a part of my life for the rest of my life, but I was going to not allow it to consume me. It was going to be a part of my life, but I was choosing not to let it be my life, if that makes sense. And not to just live, but to thrive. And I call it thriving in the aftermath of his death or the grief that's related to his death. And to this point, I have been able to do that with many ups and downs, as we'll talk about, I'm sure, during our conversation. But there have been many ups and downs throughout that time. But I am and have been able to keep moving forward. Sometimes the steps are a little bit shorter and moving forward.
Well, thank you, first of all, for sharing all of that with me because I don't care how long it's been. It still takes vulnerability to share our story. And I appreciate very much that you took the time to share that. I also want to add the fact that in watching the news report or the news interview that you did, maybe that's where I learned it. I may have read it somewhere else, but that your Daniel was an amazing little boy who was afraid of loud noises and also didn't care for fire or sparks and things like that. And it just is a testament to these kids that become these servers of others, that he overcame those things because helping people, being a fireman was more important to him than childhood aversions or fears, if you will. And I just think that speaks to the character of young man that he was. That was an important thing for him to do, to consciously. That's what it sounded like. Is that the story, that he set out to kind of overcome those fears so he could go into a life of service?
Honestly, I don't recall. I don't recall that coming up. He did make a conscious effort to be a professional firefighter once he was introduced as a volunteer, and then he made a decision. But we talked about him being not liking fire and loud noises. But we didn't really talk about whether that was kind of to help him overcome. But I will say, which is true, until his dying day, he still did not like loud noises. Like he didn't like for people to raise their voice. So that was something that he still did not like, but he loved fire service. He loved it. And so, yeah, that's always a funny story that I like to tell, that I never had to worry about him playing with matches because he didn't like it. So
It wasn't his
it
thing.
was
Well,
fun.
I can draw a commonality with the fact that not liking conflict or loud noise in general, arguments and things. Alex
Hmm.
was exactly the same way. I still feel him sometimes if there is any strife or conflict. There has been in my household with my daughter living here the last year, and I can always feel him when he there's just this angst in him when there's turmoil, and it has carried over to we have Harper, his dog, and she doesn't like conflict either. And I always say she's Alex's dog. That's not her thing. She always
Oh,
goes and sits in the corner and just kind of not cowers out of fear because she's never been anything but loved. But it's just that don't fight, don't argue. And that was the way Alex was. So I feel like that either he just attracted to that dog or that's transferred to him to her from him, because I see in her the same feeling I used to see in him even
mhm.
as a child. If his dad and I were not getting along or anybody had an argument, he not only wanted the peace, but he just needed it to come down. He didn't want the noise, he didn't want the arguing. He, on the other hand, loved fire. So that part our sons were, he was the opposite. I never was worried he'd be an arsonist, so let's not go there.
Right.
But he loved bonfires. If we were camping,
Mhm,
he was the one wanting to be there, stoking the fire and building it.
mhm.
His Facebook cover page is even a bonfire that he was at with friends. I'm assuming maybe one of the last ones. So I've left that there. I've changed it like on his birthday
Yeah.
before, and then I changed it back because it was his thing. But you can see his feed and him sitting at the bonfire, and so fire was a very good thing for him. Um, but the compassionate, caring, wanting things to be peaceful side, I see that all the time with our kids. That
Oh,
this
yes. And Daniel, he did not like confrontation either. Yeah, he didn't. And we never had like arguments. I mean, we had discussions, his dad and I, but he didn't like that. He did not like confrontations. And even I remember as a mother having to raise my voice to him a few times. And he would say, Mom, why are you yelling? He would like bring his voice down. So, Mom, why are you yelling? Like, because you're not listening, you're not
because you're
hearing me.
frustrating me. Yeah, exactly. Just because you're calm doesn't mean
Gosh,
I'm not frustrated. Yeah,
you're
exactly.
right.
Oh, I love these insights. Now, I want us to talk about several things today, and we don't have to go in any particular order, but I think a really good place to start is something you mentioned to me when we were chatting before we started recording, which is when we spoke, it would have been April of 2022, and August 4th would have been you were just shy of that. And you did share that after at the 3-year mark, even though when we spoke, you felt like you were in a pretty good place, that you experienced what you call a spiral. Will you talk a little bit about that and how that happened? Because I feel like the relatability is huge with other moms that are listening to us, to hear us that are a little further in talk about some of these milestones, help prepare us. It can also give us hope for the other side once you get through. So I would love for you to share a little bit about that part of your journey, and then we can branch
Okay,
into some of the
sure.
other things.
Yeah, certainly. So just to shed a little bit of light on, in December of 2021 is when I finished my grief coaching certification. And so then the beginning of 22, I was preparing myself to start a business as a grief coach, whatever that was going to look like, just getting myself prepared to help others while I was also helping myself and on my own healing journey. And I did a couple of virtual gatherings because if you recall, in 22, we were still very much in the throes of the pandemic. So most things, gatherings were virtual.
Still on Zoom.
And so I
Yep.
did a few of those and just preparing and all. Then it was his birthday. or
Which we've
shortly after
already
his birthday.
established
Yeah,
is 316. Yes.
yeah, his birthday is 3/16/89. And so then we talked, so it was right after his, but then it was like I just started just being sad, being angry at him, angry at his friends, angry at myself, just feeling like um, I don't want to do this. I don't want to help anybody else. And it was just not a good time. Now, the thing about it is, I still functioned. I still did the things that I had to do at home, taking care of life. I was still going along life, but this grief was really pressing on me. And by the end of that year, I kind of had a talk with myself, said, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in this space? Or do you want to try again? Do you want to try to move forward again? And I didn't like that feeling of just feeling angry and feeling blah and down. I didn't like that. So I said to myself, I want to try again. And by the beginning of the following year, which would have been 23, is when I got myself together. And that's when I published the first anthology, the compilation with some other ladies where I shared my story. So during my kind of blog time, I was actually writing that chapter too. So that may have had something to do with how I was feeling, because as I reflected on it, some folks have asked, how was the writing process to write about your story? And I say it was bittersweet. It was bitter because I had to revisit some things that I had started. I called it, I had to pull the scab back of the wound that had started to heal. But it was sweet in that I knew that there had to be another mother, father, sibling that needed to know that as bad as this is, you can still move forward. You still can have a joyful, meaningful, impactful life. And so, but yeah, 22 was my year of, whew, mm,
Like, I don't know if I can today type of thing. The grief gets in the way, and we often feel that's when, at least for me, I remember being about a year into the podcast and thinking about doing other things. The community, I started the community really small with just a once a month support group, maybe twice a month. I can't remember. It was a while ago now, but that imposter syndrome creeps in. You're like, who am I to tell anybody how to do this? I haven't figured this out yet. Right. I mean, and that's where we even get in our own heads, because at the end of the day, we now understand you're figuring this out for the rest of your life.
mhm,
And lived experience isn't replaced by a whole lot. Like, having the lived experience is one of my, if not my greatest credential, as far as I'm concerned. We can do and should do training and education to be able to help others, but I still rely on my lived experience more than I rely on anything else when I'm talking to other moms. And I see you shaking your head, and I know other people can't
yes,
see that, but you're agreeing as well,
yes,
which means the
definitely.
imposter syndrome and all the doubt gets in the way at times. It just does.
Yeah, it does. And that's one of the things early on in our orientation to the certification. Coach Dora Carpenter, she said, we do not downplay any certifications, any degrees, nothing. She said, but that lived experience and that compassion and empathy that you will have to help other people will many times override. As a grieving mother, that when we connect with each other, again, I'm grateful for the therapists, I'm grateful for the support group leaders,
Mhm.
but to connect with other mothers who have similar experience, it's like, oh, I made a new friend. Not one that I would like to have, but nevertheless, it's a new friend. It's somebody who has an idea of how I feel, what I'm experiencing. It's somebody that I can be vulnerable with and not be judged. So, yes, that lived experience I say yes. It's an A plus.
It is, and it's the greatest certification we wish we never had to have. And
Yes.
I had a very great grief coach program as well. I went through Kathy Cheshire's program, and she was absolutely amazing. And she said the same thing. She said the same thing to me at one point when we were doing my final exam was verbal and took quite a while, and because she had to actually make sure I'd paid attention to the material, right? That you actually were worthy of the certification that was going to bear her name. And one of the
Yes.
things that she said over and over to me was, some of your greatest resources going to be pulled from your own experience. And again, not belittling all the tools I'm giving you, all the things that you will now be able to use to complement that. But it really became a compliment more than the certification is greater than. It became those things are compliments and help me have a bigger tool chest to offer
Yeah.
people and other things to speak to, but still using my lived experience has still become the thing that I go back to over and over again of what would I want right now? What would I have needed if this was me? I ask myself those questions with everything I do. And I can't agree with you more on the thing that we need most as other moms, as moms, as other moms. It
Yes.
makes the biggest
Yes.
impact in our life, and it makes the biggest lasting impact because I know for a fact that I have made friends for life with some of these moms in my world, moms that I wish I had never had to come into contact for the reason we did. And yet I now have some of the most amazing and probably deepest relationships I've ever had,
Mhm.
because when you connect on this level from that place of a hole in our heart, I don't know how you unbind that. It's like there's something that grows out of that hole and connects us that can't be severed. We can be very different people that would have never interacted had we not had this loss. And yet once you're connected at this loss, there's a sisterhood that again we wished it wasn't there, but that's unbreakable and not understood, thankfully, by most people.
Yes. Yes. I've had a few people say, thank you. They thank me for what I do as far as being vocal and speaking up and telling my story. And they have said, I can't do that. I can't talk in the front of people. I can do one on one. And I said, it's okay. I'll be the voice for us. So, and I tell people who I've met along the way, I will fight for you. If you tell me if somebody insulted you or said something that hurt your feelings, I will go to them. I will go to bat for you because for several reasons, Melissa. One is some people just say things or ask questions to be curious and nosy and gossipy. But then there are those that don't know what to say because, as your listeners know, we live in a grief avoidance society. It's not something we talk about. So yes, I will go. I will be your voice. I'll be your voice, and I'll protect you because you deserve it. And so if you can't speak up, tell me. I'll speak up for you.
Hey, I agree with you. And I always say everybody isn't meant to be the same. We're not meant to be, everybody isn't, apparently, everybody didn't have my gift of gab or whatever, but that doesn't mean it's still easy for me. I'm just built this way to do this type of thing. And I tell people, but Melissa, I don't want to start a podcast or something okay. You don't, that's not your path. That was my path. But then I have found some of these amazing moms that do have hearts of service and they're out there doing it in their way in their communities, and it all matters. It's so collective. It comes
Yeah.
together. There has to be in every community, whether we look at it as a global community, however we look at it, there has to be this balance of how we do this, how we support each other. There has to be people at the front of the room. There has to be people doing the
Mhm.
tasks on the side. It takes all of us. It takes a village to get to this place where you said something that I preach on all the time. Our Western culture is so grief illiterate. It's not funny. And
Yeah.
can I say that because it is not that way in every place of the world. Many cultures celebrate their ancestors. They celebrate their dead. They actively make their dead a part of their culture and their daily life. They're not afraid to discuss it. They're not afraid to say
Mhm.
their names. They're not afraid to display their photos. And we live in such okay, the funeral's done. We're going to bring a few casseroles and now we're going to dust this off and you're getting better, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the world we live in here in the Western world. And it doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us. It's contributed to so many of the anxieties that we have. And it's one more contributor is we got to shove one more thing down, one more thing away. And those of us that have experienced the great cracking open of this child loss, we're the ones standing there going, but there isn't any pushing this down. Like you can't push this
Right.
down. We can't just treat this like our chihuahua died. And nothing against somebody's dog dying. That's a tragic thing, but it's not the loss of your child. And so this is a whole different field. And you kind of already touched on it, but I know you want to talk a little bit about, well, we already talked a little bit about the spiral, but I want to talk about, because I had that happen too, because we talked about these ebb and flows, and we know you and I both believe grief is not linear. So
Right.
there isn't any, like, we're just going to keep going up. We're just going to keep going up. And it's because it's about moving forward. But we all know that if you move forward, sometimes you take a step or two back. And that
Mm-hmm.
happens even at times in this grief journey that we feel like it shouldn't. Um, and I feel like that's part of the wisdom too, of knowing I'll be there again. I won't be there the way I was the last time because I've moved farther ahead, but it doesn't mean I won't still stumble back, that at times I may not have to sit down with it again, that at times I'm not going to have to let it come to visit because I do. It just looks different than it used to. I have more tools than I used to, but
Yeah.
I'd love you to talk about that. It's okay if you fall down and how that get up process felt to you. And that should lead you to your 5-year shift. I want to hear that story.
Let's see. So it was when I recognized and had that talk with myself that, okay, I'm tired of feeling this way. I don't want to feel this way again. What can I do? What do I need to do to get up? And I think that was also years are going so fast, but I believe that was also, I felt so bad that I thought I was really slipping into depression because I've never really had to deal with that clinically. So I actually hired a therapist to talk to about that. And I had a few sessions with her. And at the end of that, at the end of the third one, I said, I don't need you anymore. And she said, I know what you're dealing with is life changes and you're not depressed. And she had a number for how they attach a number and for it. And I agree with her. I said, I'm not, because what I didn't mention earlier, Melissa, is my mother-in-law her health was declining. She needed more help. My father's health was declining with age and with some health issues. And so out of her sons and the other daughter-in-law, I'm the one that did not have a 9 to 5 type job. So I felt like I should step up a little bit more versus pulling them out of work. But at the same time, it was like, okay, this is my time. I'm pulling myself up out of this hole. This is my time. And so I had some feelings about that. And once I talked to not grief, but the counselor, and she helped me to see it's just life. You're not depressed. And so then that's when I really truly embraced self love, just taking care of myself. And I'm not apologizing if I didn't want to go to the dinner or to the funeral or to the whatever, if I didn't want to do such and such, or if I wanted to do such and such. That's how I kind of got myself back on track and really came to grips with you don't have to be 100% in order to help someone else. And so I know that you can relate, and hopefully your listeners too, that you don't have to be 100%. It's just like bringing a girlfriend along and say, okay, I'm not feeling well today, but you aren't either. So let's go walk or talk or have tea or whatever. So that's how I got myself back going. And then I had a couple of clients who were just so grateful that I spent time with them and helped them to walk through. And when you help other people, sometimes they help you more than you help them, or you more than you think you help them. So I guess in actuality, it was changed my perspective, just shifted ever so slightly. And then in addition to that, I was going through some health things myself. I ended up with third degree heart block, which meant my upper and lower chambers of my heart was not communicating. So I ended up in the hospital for 10 days, left with the pacemaker. So all of those things were happening. And of course, the grief is what? Forever present. It's there. It's never going away. It just changes shape. And but so 2024, late 23, 24 were good years as far as me just doing all of the things, speaking and writing and TV, radio appearances. But it was in December of last year, 24, that one day I just realized that something had pivoted. There had been a shift in my grief journey. And I don't know when it happened. I just know after it had happened. And I don't know if you can relate to any of this or anybody in the audience, but like, oh, I'm feeling different. I'm just, something is different. And it was a shift. And one podcast that I was on, another grieving mom like you and me, she said it was like a turn of the corner. It's like, yeah, it's like, okay, I got to a certain spot and then turned the corner. It was like a shift. And I think I really realized it during Thanksgiving, Christmas, the holiday season here in the States, because I was more concerned about other people. My empathy meter was off the charts for other people who were so sad and dreading the holiday season, and my heart was just aching for them, but not so much for myself. I was like, oh, that's different. That's a shift. And I still want people to call my son's name. I really do. I want people to talk about him. I want to hear their stories about him, good or bad. But it didn't matter to me this past holiday season that his name didn't come up. It didn't matter as much. I was more concerned about other people. And so I knew then that a shift had taken place. And then I had the opportunity to facilitate some grief gatherings at my church. We call it Ear to Hear. And so and people were coming, and I was like, wow, people really want to know. Because the other thing that happened, Melissa, with me is I got to a point of thinking, okay, people are tired of me telling this story. People are tired of hearing about my grief and talking to them about things that they can do. But when you see people still asking, when you see people coming to something new, they didn't know exactly what it was, and asking questions and participating and telling their stories, people who I was was a speaker at an event earlier in September, and some of the people that came to me after hearing my story, I was told that they never talk about their child's death to anybody. But just by me telling mine in that public setting, feeling like I was naked, because you don't know.
Right. It's your worst nightmare if I'm naked on stage. Yeah. Because that's what it feels like. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's when all of that was, I think, part of the shift that I didn't know had happened until it had happened. And so I say, I got to keep going. Even today, I did a TV interview back in July. And even as recent as last month, I still occasionally get I know you, I saw you on TV, or the email or somebody reaching out because of that. So for that reason, I keep telling this story. I keep talking about it. But I think all of that is what caused the shift. Now, what I will say to myself, remind myself and the audience is I may regress. It may shift back. I don't know, but I'm okay with it if it does, because being on this journey is not linear. You will have some of those, you feel like you walking backwards, but and that's okay. That is quite okay. I'll give you one quick example. My son died when he was 30. At 15, 16, I guess, he had just gotten his first little job. And one Saturday morning, we went to the bank so that he could open his checking account. But of course, I had to be on it with him. And so that was when he was 16. Now, last year was 35. So it's what 20 years later, almost 20 years later. I went to that same bank. I did whatever I had to do. And as I was driving out of the parking lot, I had a meltdown. Almost 20 years later now, before this had happened, I could see his truck parked right there. I could see just the whole thing played out. And I cried. I just had a meltdown. It's like, wow, that happened almost 20 years ago. So I'm sharing that to say, be gentle to yourself, be kind to yourself, because it may pop back up stronger than you thought that it might at that point on your journey.
Thank you for sharing that. It is so relevant. It's so real. And we have already acknowledged, at least before, if not on recording yet, that we're 3 years and 3 days apart in our journey. So I'm 3 years and 3 days further in than you, because I don't think any of us can say ahead of you, because we all do work at different rates and paces, and
Yeah.
our own journey dictates. But I'm 3 years longer in this journey than you are. And I look at the shifts that I've had, and to hear you say that, it feels very much the same. I'm not, you want to think that you're going about this so intentionally that you're going to know the moment you do the thing or the things that shift you, so that you can say to somebody, if you do this, you'll shift. And it's not that exact of a science, because like you, every time I've had a shift, and I've had probably, it feels like kind of two major shifts in all this time that really kind of felt like that level up, if you will. I don't know how to, because it's not like we really move up, but it felt like a more dramatic shift than small. Now, of course, there were smaller ones along the way, but I feel like that those 2 or 3 more dramatic ones that I've had are the same thing, that suddenly one day I just kind of realized that something had shifted, that I wasn't feeling the way I had even the week before or months before. You just kind of wake up with that realization. I feel like in some ways it's like when we've tried to change a habit, or we've tried to implement a workout program, or fill in the blank. We're going along the drudgery and we're doing all the steps to create a habit that sticks, not one we have to remind ourselves of. And if we're doing that, over time, suddenly we realize I'm no longer having to remind myself to take my morning walk, or I'm no longer, we just suddenly realize we've moved into somebody who does this thing now, and it's a part of our world, but we don't always know the exact day that happened. There's just a shift. So it's kind of that same thing, but it is a testament to several things that I know you and I talk about, which is we were showing up and doing the work even when we felt like it may not be working. We would get
Right.
back up and keep trying and dusting ourselves off and trying some more. And it's a testament to putting in the work matters, finding community matters, talking about this and telling our story matters, even when it's hard, because hard things are hard. Sometimes people are surprised by, boy, that was hard. And I'm like, well, this is hard stuff, so it's going to be hard. Sometimes people think I tell my story easily. There's nothing easy about talking about my son dying. I've become better at it. I do it more often is all. I do it more often. And sometimes I get through it seamlessly, probably like you. And other times I start to choke up as if it was yesterday. We don't even have a meter. Like, you can go into something and think I'm good. And then you get there and you're like, why is my voice cracking? Why today? And those are the things we can't predict. And so I think I talked to you about this a little bit. So I want to say it, and then I want you to respond. which is when we deal with grievers that are much earlier on, grievers, and I will even say under that couple year mark, whether they're 2 months in or a year and a half in, those early grievers, it's really hard to navigate in community sometimes, not wanting them to feel like it's hopeless when they hear those of us that are 3 and 5 and 6 years and 8 years in say things like, you're going to have these ebbs and flows continue. You're going to have, and I try to balance that with hope of, but it gets easier to carry. You get more accustomed to it. The unfortunate news is it isn't going anywhere because our child isn't going anywhere for us. We are going to love our child until the day we die. If you're like most moms, we love them more every day. So that's the same thing, even though they're on the other side now. And so we do have to learn. In the first few years, we're kicking and railing against that because we just want them back. And that's where part of that comes in. We have no choice but to learn to live with this if we want to step up and thrive and or help others or help ourselves. And that's a journey. It's a journey to get there. It doesn't happen overnight. So on one hand, for a while, I felt guilt for newer grievers hearing the reality of this journey. And anymore, I no longer feel that way. I feel like it's doing them a service to help prepare them for what lies ahead, the good and the bad. And there's so much more good in my life now than bad. And I'm so much more grateful than I ever have been. And my joy is now greater than it's ever been because it sits against the backdrop of the greatest sorrow of my heart. And so I appreciate the joy more. The perspective I have is different. All the things are different. And that's where I want the hope to lie, in that even though the hard times will still come, you're better accustomed to deal with them. You know better that you're going to survive it. In the early days, I don't know about you, but I didn't know if I was going to survive it. Like, I physically felt like it could take me. And you overcome that, and you go on to figure out ways to integrate this into yourself in a way that is powerful and positive and life affirming versus the other way around. So how do you handle still imparting hope while being realistic about this is an eternal journey of sorts?
Basically, that's what I say. My lived experience, it doesn't, and it's not going away. And really, I don't want it to go away, because for it to go away means that I cut Daniel off. I cut him out of my life. And I never want that to happen. I pray that my mind never leaves me, because I always want to remember him. But what I usually say to newer grievers is to be kind to yourself. Try not to compare yourself to anyone else. Remember that grief is like a fingerprint. All of our fingers to the naked eye looks the same. But if you put it on the little ink pad
Or
or
under
put
a
it under the
microscope.
microscope, every one of them are going to look different. And that's how our grief is. It's different. It's different for everyone. So try to be kind to yourself, not compare what you're going through. Find your community. If your spouse, your family, your friends, your inner circle does not want to listen to you, if they can't handle you because you're too prickly right now, then reach out to community, reach out to a Melissa, reach out to a me, reach out to someone that a group. And even with the group, if that's not the right fit for you,
look for another one. Yep, there's a place for all of us. Yep.
Yes, there's a group for all of us. So move on. And I like to use this analogy. I'm a visual learner. So I like to think of the grief as a tennis ball, and then 3 different size jars. So the tennis ball stuffed inside of a pint-sized jar, there's not much space around it. But as time goes on and you put the tennis ball into a quart-sized jar, you have more room. And then the tennis ball ends up in a gallon-sized jar. What changed? Did the grief change? No, it's still the same. That tennis ball is still the same size. What changed is how you are learning to navigate it, how you are integrating, and I think you used that word earlier, Melissa, how you are integrating the grief into your life. So, no, the grief is not going away, but you get to choose how you navigate it, how you manage it. And I also tell new grievers to not be afraid to become friends with your grief, because it's going to show up. Some days it's going to be like the friend that exhausts you, that you say, phew, I'm tired after spending time with
You
him or
see
her.
that phone ring and you go, oh, not today, that friend. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So you can kind of wrap your head around some of those things, and then think about some other hard things that you've endured. I mean, nothing as hard as, for me, has been as hard as the death of my son, my one and only child. But I've endured some hard things over the course of my life, and I've been able to come through them. And some of them are still with me, the scars from surgery, the pacemaker in my body, but I'm still able to come through them. So if you can think like that, and I know it's difficult in the early on days, I never felt like it was going to take me out. I never wanted it to take me out, but there were some hard days, and there are still some hard days. I called it the days that I want to go fetal. I just want to ball up, pull the cover up, and just stay on my pillow. So that's what I would share. And that's what I do share with, especially new grievers
I love that. And
or
it leads
newer
in
grievers.
newer. Yes. It leads into the idea of paying attention to our emotions and being gentle with us. I always say grace and space. We're really good at giving other people grace at times, but we're really bad at giving ourselves grace. And I talk about the space piece for the same reason you do. We have to give ourselves that space to allow love in,
Yes.
especially for ourselves, because that's one of the biggest. As another mother, you can probably understand, and this is a foreign concept in the early days, because when I tell moms, your self-esteem has probably taken the biggest hit ever. And so one of the things you have to work on is getting back to self-love. They think, what the heck? My child's gone. Why do I give a crap whether I love myself or not? It is going to be the foundation on which you rebuild your life. And if we don't have self-love, we can't do a whole lot for other people, right?
Mhm.
Let alone ourselves. And so nothing takes the hit to a mom like our child died, and our child died by suicide. So
Yes.
even though there's a lot of education that will help us later look at that differently, in the beginning, the way we're looking at it as my child died by their own hand, and it inflicts us in a way that the responsibility and guilt that comes on us is so immense, which means of course we have no self-esteem left. I remember times being asked mothering questions in the early years, and all I could think when they asked it is, why the heck would you ask me? If I knew how to be a good mother, obviously I wouldn't have a child who's gone. And we know that's wrong. We know that's wrong
Right.
thinking, but it was the thinking I was having in the early days. So I want to validate if people are having that kind of thinking, because it goes into something you want to talk about, which is denial isn't always bad. I think that highlights that is there are times that we are living in that denial of what really caused it, all the different things, because it's our body protecting us. It's not time, it's too much. It could cause more adversity in ourselves if we bring things out too quickly. And we talked about all the emotions, so I would love you to address that a little bit for you, because you talked about some of it so well, about why denial isn't always bad, and things like anger and guilt, and we talked about that whole emotional spectrum.
Yes. I think, Melissa, when it comes to emotions, we, and not just you and me, but just we in general, divide them into good and bad. It's good to feel happy or to feel joy, but it's bad to cry. It's bad to feel anger. It's bad to do whatever it is. But when you really take a close look at it, um, denial is not always a bad thing. Excuse me. When we deny that certain things happen, perhaps it's really look at it as our brain protecting us. Because had we known some of the turmoil, I'll call it, that we would go through as the result of our son's final decision, we may not have made it if we had not denied ourselves to, I'm not going to think about it. I don't want to think about it. I had someone ask me, well, how do you know it was suicide? Okay, I don't want to talk about this. I know it was. Everything pointed to it being, and that's what what it was. So I'm not going to go there with you. I denied myself that discussion because then that may have made me think about, well, ask myself all of these questions. At the end of the day, my child is not coming back. Um, Anger is not bad because
it can be really productive sometimes.
it can be really productive. It caused me to have some conversations with Daniel's two best firefighter friends who he was with all the time, because it caused me to come to grips with myself to say, you know what, it wasn't their fault. They didn't know. He didn't tell anybody. And so with that, once I was able to deal with that with myself, then I was able to have the conversation with them and really to apologize. They didn't know that I blamed them for some of this stuff, but I was able to say, I don't blame you all. I'm not angry at you all. And it caused them to be able to tell me, we blamed ourselves too, because we didn't know. We thought he was happy. We thought whatever. And so it kind of, that helped because I experienced that anger. It really turned out to be a positive thing. Just like guilt can eat you alive, really. Yeah. It may not be a good term to use, but it really can. But if we think about guilt as being a way to reflect and come to reality, is like, okay, you're feeling guilty for something that you had no idea about. You're feeling guilty because you had about something you had no control over. And I think you and I may have touched on this early on in a conversation or the podcast about your son had just recently left you and gone back to school. You had no idea.
I would have physically held him down if I had an idea, right? That's what we do as good moms, right?
I hadn't seen my son for, I think it had been like 10 days or 14 days. But the last time I saw him, he was upbeat and he was dealing with life. So though I felt guilty for not that he was gone, but still it helps to self-reflect and say, you know what, he could have walked out of your door and the same thing happened. So, but dealing with these emotions, giving space to, I call these emotions that we tend to call bad emotions, they sometimes can lead to good. And so I encourage you to not suppress them when they come. Now, if it's out of control anger, if it's causing you to want to do something to somebody else or self-destructive, I'm trying to think of the clinical term, but if it's an ongoing, everyday thing, everyday thoughts, yes, then you probably need to talk to a professional. But,
right, and
don't
I
be
always
afraid
say,
to experience them.
Yeah, I always say that most of us know when we've lived in a space too long, whether it's the guilt, the anger, whether it's out of control. Are we controlling it or is it controlling us? Right. And so the hallmark for a lot of therapists is, okay, I hear you saying you're going through these emotions of, we'll just use guilt and anger, for example, but is it impacting your ability to live your daily life in a productive way? And if you can say, well, not really, but I'm still, then it may not be a bad thing. It then becomes something to, okay, let's address this. Let's talk about what you're learning from it. Let's be proactive in leaning into those emotions instead of trying to cover them up or mask them so that the growth can happen. If the answer is yes, it's impacting my daily life because yes, I want to either bring harm to myself or someone else, or I'm so caught up in it that I can't function, that's when we need help. And usually by that time, I'm the person that has said, I'm sick of even hearing myself talk about this. So if I'm sick of hearing myself talk about it, then I probably, if I'm the calling myself and I can't answer the phone, then I need to sing a new tune. It's time to change. But most of us have that in us. We can either say, yes, it's impacting my life to where I can't function in the way I should, so we know it's time to change, or we're sick of ourselves and in that playing the same song over, and therefore we also know it's time to shift at that point too. But there's times that we can say, well, no, it's not really, I'm holding up, but I'm still guilty and I'm still feeling, well, it's okay to work through that. It's okay to work through that and not feel like you said, I think I used the analogy earlier when we were talking of that chart that's in the doctor's office with the smiley face and the angry face, and they want to know how you're feeling. And yes, I get it. If it's a pain scale, they do need to know pain. But if they're bringing it to you from an emotional standpoint and they're saying, emotionally, where are you at on this scale? We see it as good and bad. We don't see it as just, okay, I'm at this place. Because they also give it numbers on a scale of 1 to 10. How good are you and how bad are you? Instead of, it should be, just where are you at in your emotional spectrum right now, and not assigning a bad, a good, a number. And that's where we've misstepped with a lot of things having to do with emotional health, mental health, grief literacy, just struggle in general in our culture. You're supposed to, if you're sad, you got to learn to be happy. If you're mad, you got to quit that. We got to be good, and we got to put the great picture up there and realize that the human experience is going to, there's times it's okay to be meh. There's just times that you're not in an overly joyful place, but it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. You're just in a meh space right now. And that's okay. So I think it's a good time for us to segue as we look towards wrapping up our conversation and have you talk about what you offer now, as far as you are doing things a little bit differently. You still are doing grief coaching, but talk about what that looks like. And then either before or after you talk about that, share your heart project book, your journal that's out there at the world. There will be a link to it in my show notes, but talk about obviously Daniel was the reason and the inspiration, but talk about why a journal and how that can help grievers that are listening.
Okay. Yeah, I will. If I could just say one more thing about emotions,
Of course.
and that is joy and sorrow. I would love for our audience to know that if you choose to, joy and sorrow can coexist.
Oh, I say that all
There
the
was
time.
a
I love
time
that.
that I wouldn't have thought that, but I know and I remember the night that we found out about Daniel's death. I said, I am not going to allow this to steal my joy, my peace, and my mind. Now, of course,
It
I
was a
was in
battle.
total shock.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm like, what made me say that? But I remember saying that as I was crying on the shoulder of one of my friends. And so I say to our audience today is, if you start to feel joy, laughter, want to have fun, that is not diminishing the relationship that you have with your loved one. It is not. I say
It
my
celebrates it.
sorrow is always playing in the background of my subconsciousness. He's always there. The questions are always there. But I'm here to tell you that I experience joy. I am having a good life, living a meaningful and impactful life. And so just know it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay, I love
So
that.
what am I doing now? I am still doing some grief coaching is for the adult that have accepted that this has happened to me. I can't change it, but I want to move forward with my own life, but I need some help. And so that's where we come together and we figure out, what do you want your life to look like now? How do you want your loved one to be remembered? What do you want to do to help keep his or her memory alive? And then how can you take care of yourself? What do you want that to look like? And so we just set those things in place. It's really just helping them move forward with their lives and their new normal, because it is different. Or maybe I should say a different normal, because it's going to be different forever now. So, but then I also do some speaking to groups, to networking groups, to let them, to remind us in our grief avoidance society that whether you talk about it or not, grief is going to hit your household. It is going to come your way. So I talk to entrepreneurs about how to be proactive, or I talk to them after something has happened, how they can continue to speak to their clients, their employees, in order to keep their businesses afloat. And of course, there are, I do many many workshops too. One is about the stigma behind suicide, how to navigate that. And I made up an acronym. I call it Sting the Suicide Stigma. And I also do a workshop about self-love called the ABCs of Self-Love. And it's a big old acronym using the 26 letters of the alphabet. And we just talk about different ways that you can practice self-love and understand that what self-love is and what it's not. It's not to be boastful or look down on people. It's taking care of yourself, putting yourself, not sacrificing yourself, your well-being for everything else and everybody else. So that is basically what I'm doing now. Always got a new project in the incubators of my mind. And you asked me about my baby. Journal is on Amazon. It is called My Suicide Journey Journal and Memory Book. It is a memory book, a book that I put together because I was looking for something that I could write in, that had prompts for me to write, or I could write just free hand. It had a space that I could put in little, like cards and little letters that I found that Daniel gave me when he was a child, or even as an adult, some pictures, and also some quotes to encourage the grieving person, resources. And Melissa, I used you as one of my resources, the leftover pieces, and your website is in my journal as a resource. And also has, what else does it have? Yeah, I think that's it. So it's dedicated, it's in his memory. He knew that I liked books, and the last trip that we took, we called our little get-togethers adventures. So the last adventure that he and I had was to a book fair, this huge bookstore. And the joke was, I had told him to go to the next floor to find some books that I thought he would like. And then I couldn't find him. So I called him and he said, "Genius, you told me to go to the third floor." So I was like, "Oh, forgot that there was a third floor." So that was one of the happy
It must have been
moments
like
that
a
we
Barnes
had.
and Noble. They have all those floors.
Yeah. So, but anyway, and I just wanted a book that was easy to use. I wanted it to be affordable. I wanted it to be, what do I call it? It's a resource, but it's also something that you can just take with you. And so that's why I love my journal.
Well, I have it listed on the show notes where I put all the things. I am also going to I have to admit that my memory isn't always what I would like it to be, but if Lynn is not on my resource page, she will be as of this afternoon with her grief coaching. And I know through your website, you can find all the things as well. So they'll have lots of ways to find you and the amazing, compassionate work that you're doing, Lynn. I'm so thankful that we did this today. Again, I haven't. You'd think I would have welcomed back most of my guests by now, and it just for whatever reason isn't always what we do. So you're in a small handful of group of people that have come back, and I think that I never really considered that in the beginning because one, I didn't know I'd be 4.5 years in still doing the podcast. I have been asked, are you going to end it? And I haven't even thought about that. I'm sure at some point I will, but at this point, as long as there's people that want to talk about their stories, I want to tell them. And I think it's really important to have updates. It's been 3 years for listeners that I have many listeners that will tell me I'm starting over. I'm listening to your host. And I think, wow, that's a lot of podcasts. Because there's like
Mhm.
160 podcasts out there now from In the Leftover Pieces. So, and I realize some of them are short and some, but half of those are long. Half of them are an hour to an hour and a half. And so there's people that have heard your story more than once before, and now they get to hear where you're at 3 years later. So I think it's super important that people like you are willing to come back and say, offer the hope that it does get
Yes.
different. It does change. It does get gentler. It does get less sharp. I hate to use words like easier because that's subjective, but it does change and we do grow with it. And it does get easier to bear in many ways. And our growth shows that the things that we do and the things that we say. So I'd love you to be sure you end with anything you want to share. Be sure to share your website out loud. So if people can't go to the show notes, they've at least heard you say it. I've linked your Instagram. I've linked all the things there, but share your website. Is that the one place you want to be sure people know about if they're just listening?
Yes, the website is long, so I'll say it twice. It's Destined to Thrive griefcoaching.com. That's Destined to Thrive griefcoaching.com. And so you can find me there. And I am on Instagram as Grief Coach Lynn. And I always check my things, my messages, and check this just to be sure. And I don't think I sent this one to you, Melissa, but I have a scheduler, the Calendly. So if you want to schedule just a chat with me, go to www.calendly, calendly.com
It's hard to say
slash
Calendly, isn't it?
yeah, and then slash destined to thrive. And
I'll
you can
add that
just
link to the show notes. That way,
yeah,
that'll be easier to see for people that want to see it. That way, if they want to schedule a time to talk to you, they
yeah,
can.
yeah, just to have a chat. If it's just to have a chat, or if you want more information about the services that I offer, but the first chat is just a complimentary chat. So yeah.
Lynn, thank you. This has been, it's still hard to sometimes say this was amazing because we wish we weren't talking about this, but it's been amazing. I feel so lucky to have you as a mother and warrior in arms. As much as we wish this wasn't our journey, it is. So I'm blessed and fortunate to be surrounded by so many moms that are doing what you're doing, that are helping others, and just that are helping. We're helping each other. We're helping each other figure out how to get through this for the rest of our lives.
For the rest of our lives. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come back. And like I said, it's just because we know that we're not the only two. We know that. And the other part is sometimes we hear things differently. Mm-hmm. When I listen to my podcast, my interview from almost 3 years ago, I had forgotten some of the things that I talked. I'm like, oh, I need to do that again. And so yeah. So, but
well, it was like I was
so
telling you, if I looked back at the things I was saying in the beginning, I'm sure I could take exception with some of them now. If I look back at even some of my early rabbit holes in 4.5 years ago and sharing things that applied to me then versus how I may have evolved and now, I'm sure some of it, but that's where it's a journey. They get to listen to the journey, not only mine, but yours and other grievers as we move forward as well. Yeah. So
definitely. I love your rabbit holes. I haven't been as diligent to listen, but early on, before I had so many other things came into my life, I would listen to your rabbit holes, and it just thought provoking and true stuff, thought provoking. And what I love about your podcast, Melissa, is it reaches to, I say, all corners of the world. You can always find something that you can relate to. And you mentioned early on about we don't always have the same ideas or how to navigate. But at the end of the day, it's about navigating this grief journey, this hand that we were dealt that we definitely didn't want, but we have it. So we get to choose how to navigate it. And I'll leave your audience with this. Just know that your journey is your journey. Just like if you were packing to go on a trip, you were packed different from me. The same thing, you want to eat different things from me. You want to go to different places. The same thing with your grief journey. It's your journey. It's your journey. And so you manage it how it feels right for you. And don't forget to change direction. Don't forget to pivot if you need to, if you feel the need to. Don't forget to pivot.
Yeah,
It's okay.
it is
So,
okay.
thank you,
Thank you.
Melissa.
Thank you for such great closing words. I don't even have anything to add. I'm just so thankful. And so I will just say it until we talk again. I'm look forward to it. I hope that in a couple of years we'll visit up again and see how things are going. And I know we'll stay in touch through the wonderful wide world web, but that's a good place to be with people sometimes. So thank you
Yes,
so much, Lynn. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Talk soon. Grievers, it is my hope that from today you will take that which serves you and simply leave the rest. I would love to connect with you, and the best way to do that is to start out on my website, where the first thing you'll find is a video recorded message from me. And then from there, you can find everything I offer: the online Zoom support groups, the books I've written, ways to connect for the podcast, and an entire resource library assembled to help all suicide loss grievers find the resources that they need to help them along their healing journey. Please go to theleftoverpieces.com. From there, I hope that we can connect, and I hope that you too can discover that we truly are better together. If anything that you've heard in today's episode resonates with you, I would ask that you please subscribe to get notified every week of my new episodes. And then take a moment to rate and review me on Apple Podcasts so that more grievers like us can find this podcast and this community. It is from my own experience of finding myself sitting amid the leftover pieces of my own shattered heart that I can tell you that while it seems impossible in the early days, it is possible to put those pieces back together and be okay again. And every week, we'll be right here providing more comfort, hope, and community. So until next week, I'll sign off today with some words from one of my Alex's favorites, Peter Pan. Never say goodbye, because goodbye means going away, and going away means forgetting. Grievers, no one here's forgetting. Talk soon.